Hello everyone. Let me ask you a simple question. What is something that matters to you the most? Is it your house, your phone, your friends, or family? Well, to tell you honestly, it doesn't matter anyway. Because with a few super typhoons, high magnitude earthquakes, and sea level rising, they will all cease to exist in a snap. But don't worry too much, because thankfully, there is one solution on how we can save ourselves and our planet. That's why I am making this video to encourage you to fight back to those devastating disasters. And of course, during these calamities, it is inevitable that someone will get hurt. Therefore, I'll also demonstrate proper response to emergencies. Before we dive into our main topic, it's important to know what we are dealing here. That is climate change, specifically its impacts to disasters. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Now, it may sound totally harmless since we always experience changes in weather, but it's not, and we should be alarmed about it. Let's move on to what causes climate change, such as greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, and transportation. But we'll focus with this greenhouse gas. They are heat-trapping gases that accumulate in the atmosphere that results to greenhouse effect. They all sound confusing and hard to understand, but it all comes down to one thing: global warming. This is a phenomenon marked by an increase in the average global temperature. And since the Philippines is located in Southeast Asia in the Western Pacific Ocean, it is prone to one of the most devastating effects of global warming, which is sea level rise. Sea levels in the Philippines are rising at roughly twice the global average rate when particularly powerful storms such as Typhoon Haiyan hit land. The higher sea levels contributes to storm surges of up to 15 to 20 feet. This puts at risk 60% of LGUs covering 64 coastal provinces, 822 coastal municipalities, 25 major coastal cities, and an estimated 13.6 million Filipinos that would need relocation. I know they all sound horrible and sad if it were to happen, but the reason why I did this video is to raise awareness. Now, let's proceed with the importance of disaster preparedness. Let's start with item number 1. Safety assured. Preparing for such disaster before it is expected to happen will help the people not to panic. This will allow them to clear their head and enable their critical thinking during the time the disaster happens. Next is that it abates casualties. During the disaster, people will be able to protect themselves and reduce the risk of injuries and even death. Lastly, the recovery will be quick. After the disaster, it will lessen the damages, therefore, it will also lessen the cost of repairs. Now that we know how obvious and important disaster preparedness is, let's proceed with the proper response to injuries, namely first aid, dressing and bandaging techniques, and emergency transport. The first thing we should do is to move the victim to a safe and conducive area. After that, immediately ask for help. Inspect the scene to determine any possible threats and hazards. Face the victim and introduce yourself. Intervene and conduct assessment. Check the victim's consciousness, breathing, pulse, and airway. Second, perform secondary assessment. Seek the signs and symptoms felt by the victim, allergies that the victim has, medication that the victim is currently taking, previous medical conditions. Third, check for his vital signs. Take down his pulse rate, breathing, dilation of pupils, changes in skin color or body temperature, and his state of consciousness. The last thing that we need to do is to conduct a head-to-toe examination. Examine any fractures, open wounds, tenderness, and swollen parts. That's all, and remember to record all the procedures done, stay with the victim until professional care arrives, and tell the medical professionals about the situation. If the medical professionals fails to arrive and if you see any open wounds that need to be treated so that no more infection and further injury will happen, perform a dressing and bandaging techniques. First, wash the area with mild soap and water. Apply some betadine or anything that prevents further infection using a cotton swab. Use a sterile cloth or gauze as a dressing and apply pressure for 10 minutes. Now, grab a bandage or improvise using a handkerchief to support the dressing. And that's the end of our video. Remember that climate change is really happening, and yes, it may seem that it's harmless because we are not affected by it directly, but the truth is it is happening and worsening that it all may sound. I want to share you this quote I read from social media. It's that penguins are standing on thin ice and soon us. I don't know why, but I felt so moved and touched, and I hope you are too, because there's no point in shifting the blame. Remember that our future is up to us.